Hello, my name is Nazar Bartosik, and I want to present a brief overview of the exciting and relatively new project called Muon Collider, covering the recent progress made towards understanding its physics potential by the Muon Collider Physics and Detector Group. So, for many years, LHC has been one of the leading driving forces of R&D in particle physics. And nowadays, the big question is what to do afterwards, in particular after the high luminosity LHC program. And typically, the two kinds of machines have been considered for that. Electron-positron colliders that are providing very clean collisions, but they are limited in the luminosity and energy reach. And then there were proton colliders that can reach much higher luminosity and energies, but they are limited in their kinematic precision due to the underlying structure of the hadrons. And in that respect, Muon Collider allows to combine these two features in a single facility because muons are still elementary particles, so they can provide these clean collisions, but thanks to their higher energies, they suffer much less from synchrotron radiation. It can be accelerated to much higher energies than electrons. In particular, it has been shown recently that starting from 3 TeV, Muon Collider becomes the most energy efficient machine in terms of integrated luminosity delivered per watt of energy. In particular, this multi-TeV regime is very interesting because, as you can see from this plot on the left, as you go higher in the collision energy, Muon Collider essentially becomes a vector boson collider, and that provides extremely rich physics programs that could be explored at such a facility. For example, it can provide unprecedented accuracy for electroweak Higgs coupling measurements thanks to high VBF production cross-section, and discovery reach at 14 TeV at Muon Collider would be comparable to that of FTCHH at 100 TeV. So that has motivated a gradually increasing flow of theory papers appearing covering the Muon Collider physics case, considering a wide range of center of mass energy starting from the Higgs mass to 100 TeV. And here I'm just want to mention one of the most recent papers, Muon Smasher's Guide. There are, of course, challenges that prevented Muon Collider from being implemented before, but now it starts to become a reality. And one is related to the muon production and acceleration scheme. The baseline, most straightforward way is to do it starting with the protons that hit a target to produce pions and then decay to muons. But before accelerating them, the emittance of the muon beam has to be reduced to the necessary level. And that has been a primary topic of a dedicated collaboration, mice collaboration, that has recently demonstrated experimentally the feasibility of their ionization cooling approach, and it is now considered as a baseline for a Muon Collider test facility. There is an alternative scheme called low emittance muon accelerator that uses a positron beam that hitting an electron-rich target through annihilation produces muon beams directly with very low emittance, but currently it doesn't look feasible due to the very low muon production cross-section, which requires positron beams of extreme intensity. So that limitation still has to be overcome. The second challenge is related to the fact that muons decay. This has been studied extensively in the past within the Muon Accelerator program using Mars 15 software, and they have identified two main aspects of that. One is the neutrino radiation hazard, because when you take multi-TeV muon beams, the neutrinos from their decays are very energetic, and they pose a substantial radiation dose on the surface of the Earth. So this is something that has to be carefully taken into account when designing such an experiment, in particular the choice of the location of the accelerator and the design of its lattice to minimize the neutrino-induced radiation hazard on any public spot. The second aspect related to muon decays is the beam-induced background in the detector of the experiment, because the secondary and tertiary particles, they eventually reach the detector, causing the radiation damage and high occupancies that complicates the event reconstruction. The most detailed study to date for the beam-induced background has been performed again by the MAP program for 1.5 TeV center of mass energy, where they designed an accelerator lattice and machine detector interface that is essentially shown here in yellow, the tungsten nozzles and covered in borated polyethylene that reduce the rate and energy of the beam-induced background particles by several orders of magnitude. We have now a new workflow to simulate beam-induced background based on Fluka software that has been demonstrated to provide good agreement with the previous results based on Mars 15 for 1.5 TeV center of mass energy. So we are ready now to explore higher energies, up to 10 TeV or more. To be able to use a detector or to run an experiment with this high-intensity beam-induced background, we have to explore a few of the characteristic features of this background. The first one is the fact that these particles are predominantly very soft and fairly uniformly distributed in the detector. So unlike pileup at LHC, they are not producing isolated high-energy deposits, but rather very diffusely distributed energy deposits. Second feature is their spread in time that can reach few nanoseconds up to few microseconds, which is a significant spread with respect to the muon-muon collision time of a few tens of picoseconds. So with detectors that have comparable timing resolutions, that becomes a very strong handle on the beam-induced background. And finally, those particles, they mainly originate from the surface of the nozzles that is extended along the beam line and not concentrated in the center of the detector where the signal usually comes from. So it is clear that we need sophisticated detector technologies to exploit these features, and we need really full detector simulation to properly take into account all the possible effects. And we do that using tools that we have largely inherited from the click experiment. So our detector is mostly the click detector with several modifications. In particular, we inserted the tungsten nozzles developed by the MAP program, shown here. They have this opening angle of 10 degrees that limits our acceptance in the forward region. Then the other characteristic features of the detector is the all-silicon tracker with double layer structure in the vertex detector here close to the interaction point, where the double layer structure allows to use heat doublets for matching them in time and angle. And then it has high granularity colorimeters and muon detectors based on RPCs. All the simulations are done within the ILC soft framework, and we are planning to transition to the new iteration of that called Key4HEP in the future. From the point of view of detector design and event reconstruction, tracking is the most challenging part because of the very high heat density due to the beam-induced background reaching 1000 hits per square centimeter. And it is clear that timing is a crucial component there. For example, assuming a time resolution up to 30 picoseconds, we can use very narrow time windows to select only hits interesting for us. And we are able to reduce the occupancy to manageable data rates for allowing triggerless readout, which is largely thanks to a fairly low collision rate at Muon Collider below 100 kilohertz. So with that, the remaining bottleneck is the track reconstruction time, because even with that occupancy, the combinatorics for track seeding and pattern recognition is way too high to make it realistic at this time scale. So we have a few other promising beep suppression strategies under study based on the matching of heap doublets with interaction point as well in space, as well as using cluster shape and charge information for providing sensitivity to the particle type and crossing angle. That is, again, a strong discriminating factor against the beam-induced background. Of course, other optimizations explored by other experiments like parallelization, 4D tracking are also very relevant, but it is clear that a realistic reconstruction strategy requires flexible optimization for a specific track topology. For jets, we of course need colorimetry information, and you can see that at Muon Collider, both ECAL and HCAL are uniformly lit by quite large energy deposits. So one has to use again timing and shower depth profiles that look quite different for signal and for the background to be able to subtract that background contribution and keep high energy resolution. And due to the problems with combinatorics for track reconstruction, we have to proceed with jet reconstruction in 3 stages, starting from just colorimeter clusters to define the regions of interest that are then used for track reconstruction within those cones, and then eventually combining tracking and colorimetry information for full jet reconstruction. But of course, there is still lots of room for improvement. Finally, even at this stage, we already can see an overall good detector performance in terms of tracking efficiency, jet reconstruction, widget identification. So we already have several physics analyses ongoing. One I would mention in particular is the study of sensitivity to Higgs couplings to B and C quarks and to Z bosons that will be presented also at this conference by Rosa Maria. And then we have few other interesting topics in Higgs physics, in dark sector, in searches for long-lived particles, luminosity measurement, etc. So to summarize, Muon Collider is truly a unique machine for both new physics discoveries and precision measurements, and it is gaining increasing attention from the theoretical and experimental communities. There is a feasibility study undergoing within the International Muon Collider collaboration, which will cover both the accelerator design and the detector R&D. It is clear that beam-induced background is pushing the detector requirements at Muon Collider to the limits in terms of time resolution, granularity, data rates. Some of these overlap with existing efforts for other experiments, but some are unique really just to the Muon Collider. We of course need innovative reconstruction approaches to cope with this high occupancy at the Muon Collider experiment. And we already have several benchmark physics analyses ongoing, but there is of course lots of space for improvements in this analysis and lots of new topics to be covered by anyone willing to join the project. And just to finish, I'd like to mention a few recent events on the topic. One is the Muon community meeting, where the accelerator design aspects were mostly covered and preparation of the test facility. And the second one is the Muon Collider Physics and Detector workshop, where the physics reach of the Muon Collider and the necessary detector technologies for that were discussed. Thank you for your attention.